Hi and welcome to the Shaun Shears Show. With me, Shaun Shears, a disabled singer-songwriter with arthritis and cerebral palsy, presenting this podcast rough and ready and live from his bedroom in his den of iniquity, in his flat in Southampton, in his home country of England in the UK. This podcast is about my experiences as a disabled singer-songwriter and artist, and the processes that I go through, the journeys that the songs go through, and the stories behind all the things that I do, which sometimes are quite funny, quite interesting, but they are there to inspire you, whether you're artistic or not. If there's something you want to do in life, go out there and do it. It doesn't matter how you bake the cake, get to the destination, doesn't matter how you get there. You don't always have to take a plane or boat, you can swim. And if you bake a cake, you don't always have to follow the recipe. Just follow your instincts. So with that in mind, what happens when I do a lot of these songs, I kind of find that I'm asking myself a big question. So what happens when you have a piece of music like this? Come on. I know what you're going to say. Bin it, Shaun. Bin it straight away. But let me just take you through the process of this a second. A couple of years ago, 20 years ago now probably, I've just had my birthday, getting old. I was working with two really good vocalists, Daisy Brookman and Rosie Zaragoza. And we were doing like an acoustic set with, two good guitarists, John Hughes with Daisy, and Andy Davey with Rosie. But the point is that with John's stuff, it was like we'd had big recordings, we'd got all the notation down, and I was sort of learning still how to get that all done in a way that a guitarist could understand, but also I was a bit sort of embarrassed because I couldn't show people what I was playing because my hands had got bad. I'd taken a lot of medication, I'd forgot stuff, but I'd recorded it, so I was a hoarder for recording. Anyway, the idea was that when I go to Rosie and Andy and I take these new songs, these different songs, what I wanted to do was kind of what I'd done in the other lineup, because Daisy had sort of taken the lead guitar line and she sang it, and she had quite a bright gothic operatic range, and it fitted those particular songs really well. So I went to Rosie, and I knew Rosie's range was just as powerful, but she was a bit, she, just like Daisy, she was a human cello. So I thought maybe if I give her this, sorry, I didn't cut it. Basically, if I gave her that, something like that to sing, I could come up with some lyrics, maybe some chords, and Andy could come up with something on the guitar, and maybe it would break the ice, and we could have a song that we've kind of got together, and we could do this stint of shows, and we would, it would then lead to, sort of rediscovering the other stuff that I'd written, and sort of reinterpreting that in a really quick way, because we had a really short rehearsal process. But how that came about was I had a program on my computer at the time. Someone had said, "Oh, you really ought to try this program," and it wasn't Sibelius. I can't remember what it was. It's a very cheap program, as you can hear from that recording. And they said, "Oh, you put the notes on and it plays it." and I only knew, I know my basic notation, so I put a couple of scales on there, wrote down what the notes were, and sort of thought, well, maybe she can come up with something. So that was the idea. Anyway, nothing came of it. So that remained where it was. Saved it, found it in Dropbox the other day, a couple of months ago, and was like, okay, maybe I can do something with this. Because I thought to myself, well, I'm not really, I thought, still there, I've still got it written down on a bit of paper and everything. So I thought, maybe I can do something with this. So I found an app called Harmony Wiz. And what it is, it's an app done by Jordan Rudess of Dream Theatre. And it's for composers, for classical composers, but mainly the main novelty behind it is that you can draw paintings, you can draw pictures, or put pressure on like a drawing pad, on like a white pad, and it will put notes on the stave. But the actual point of it is if you're actually a classically trained musician, you can do a couple of bars of music and do a couple of instruments, and then any other instrument you kind of think, I haven't figured out the horn part yet, or I haven't figured out this part or that part. You can sort of say, well, actually, I think I want it in this genre, and I think I want that instrument. You can press a button and it will generate and correct and just go through and grammatically correct any mistakes you've made, or ask you if you want to correct them or if you want to leave them, but it will generate parts, and then gives you ideas on what you may want to do. Then you can go and refine that and tweak that and make it your own. So I took this once again. My God, you can see I was going to be the next Fatboy Slim, couldn't you? Jeez, you should have cut it for the podcast. So, I took those notes, put them on a stave in Harmony Wiz, messed around with, a string quartet, sort of was like, okay, I put a few bits together, and then sort of thought, well, actually, let's see what this thing suggests. So, sat back, pressed the button, didn't like one or two suggestions, so I started to tweak it because I could begin to see the patterns and the outlines. So then the problem I had was, okay, well, do I go to a studio? I don't exactly know how I want to arrange this. I've only got a certain number of bars anyway. I only think it was like 12, 14 bars of music. Anyway, so I was like, okay, sure, like, what are you going to do? Can't afford to, even if you'd written an entire 20-minute piece, you haven't got the money to go and, afford these musicians, and I've worked with some great studios that have great sound packages and sound instruments and stuff, but I thought, what, it is there, I kind of like the sound of these things, but I didn't really know how I was going to compose it. That was the biggest thing. So I thought, well, why don't I just screen record it, and sort of just have everything on mute, start with one track, and then just mute and unmute the others, because that would just seem like the most logical way to do it. And then I can look back at the screen recording and go, yeah, that part works really well, or I can start it over again and just take the best bit. So I did, and this was what I got: a song called While They Sleep, a composition called While They Sleep. Now, little did I know this was going to take me down a path where I thought, oh my God, I've lost my entire identity as Mr. Wheelchair Sex, the heckler, and all these other indie pop songs and fun songs that I'd written. I thought, oh, people are going to think, oh, what's he doing? But I thought, well, okay, let's just give it a go. So this is called While They Sleep, and it's available from all good digital stockists. Okay, it's hardly the greatest piece of classical music you will ever hear, but what you are hearing in that is exactly how it's coming together. You're hearing it all come together, it all being conducted live, you're in the moment. And this is partly what's led me down the fact that saying, actually I might not have any genre anymore. I might not have a clear-cut genre because, partly because I started to look at the work I'd already done, and I'd done an instrumental improvisational piece with Tim Brownty, who's come on board for the Reinvented EP and Christmas Time and Let the Good Times Roll, and he's really just been great live. And we played The Great Escape, we've done some fantastic things in being able to reach out to Festival Public and a lot of promoters and the Tate Modern and really take the songs into different areas. So I wanted to sort of be able to match him, not musically, because I know I'm not going to be able to do that. I can't play guitar, I'm very limited with piano, and all that sort of stuff. So I found that I knew these apps like Alley Ooper and Reason, and a couple of years ago, this is the other thing as well, I find now, like, I've always wanted to dabble in as many different bits of music and different things as possible, and sort of go, okay, it's okay, like an actor going and doing a film. So it's like I might go and do a comedy, I might then go and do a serious one. The films might not be great, but they might be just okay. And then when you look at it years later, you might go, actually, that was really good, that film. At the time, because there was so much other stuff going on, and especially now, you've got all these studios, you've got all this sort of, you've just got a lot of flash over substance, and everything's almost too perfect. And I think you need that element of human error, or that element of vulnerability to be able to connect. So I think that's true of all art in some cases. However, that's getting back to the point of not having a genre. When you're working with something like Festival Republic, you want to show you've got as many different sides to yourself as possible, but you want to be able to say the main thing I do is this. I'm a singer-songwriter, I'm an entertainer, I entertain. But I've done this thing with Tim, and I was like, okay, I just want to practice using the apps and producing, because I wanted to make sure when I got to the studio, had really good demos. So part of that would be practicing on these DJ apps like Alley-Ooper. It's now turned into a version of Figure, it's turned into Figure. And I put it up on Twitter, just the Alley-Ooper one once, and Seb Fontaine said he liked it. I said it was a friend of mine under another name, and I just didn't have the money by PRS to go and register as another name. I didn't want to set up a whole other, sort of thing, a whole another social media thing. So I ended up just sort of going, what's really good about this, I thought to myself, was I can actually start with a baseline. It's like baking a cake. I can start any point I want, and eventually I might build a house, but I can overdub what I've done, and it will keep looping it. And the only problem I've got is that I don't want everybody to hear it in one go. I want them to hear what I'm doing as I'm hearing it. So again, on went the screen record, and started started playing the drum line, playing the bass line, playing that. Went back to the days when I was back in the gym, and my instructor got me into DJing, me and my mate into DJing through school for kids' parties. Said, normally it goes like this, and then it goes like that. So the beat would come in, then the bass, and the lead, then this and that. So I was like, okay, cool, So I took kind of what I did with DJing and applied it to classical music as I'd done previously, and then I sort of went back to basics here and sort of went into another realm with dance music, which very few people do, which is play all the lines myself. Did use the odd loop on one or two on the EP, but Retro Electro is the name of the EP, and the opening track is called Roadman Chill, and here it is for you now, and it's available as always from all good digital stockists, but bearing in mind what you're hearing is what you're actually getting. So I'm playing all the instruments, editing it, filtering it all at one time, and this is one that I actually forgot I'd done, so I find it quite a pleasant surprise. So here's Roadman Chill from the EP Retro Electro, which does what it says on the tin, baby. basically everything you heard there was live, apart from the fade out at the end. But it was good to sort of flex my musical muscles on these apps, because people don't think that there's any skill to it. What I will say to people with disabilities is there is skill to it. You have to just find your own way around it. And I will say to anyone who feels they haven't got any musical talent or anything like that, you have. You just need to find your own way of putting it out there. And I'm sure any other artist, whatever it is that you do, can support the encouragement of others. The one thing I will say about the tough economic times we're in, and the fact that we've just come out of a pandemic, and it's great that studios are back up and running, it's great that live music is back out there. But one thing that happens, I think, when artists get their own home studios and their own iPads and their own tablets, and they figure out there's a way to record and they can do it quite cheaply and they like it, sometimes it's really good because it catches their authenticity. But it also, can make an artist get very lazy and repeat themselves and do the same thing over and over and over again. And I don't think anybody really wants to do that. So the great thing about these apps, and the great thing about it's not even apps, it's just the great thing about technology and music is that it's not forcing you, it's allowing you to go into other areas that you wouldn't normally go into, which is great. And you don't need all the money in the world to have these great session musicians or have this great sound of that, because it's there. The sounds are there, they're there to be used, and they're available. So one genre that's always been hard is jazz. For most people, for me, I kind of quite like it. I find it quite interesting to play. Because for me, I like playing all the wrong notes in the right order, as I think it was Morecambe Wise once said. But the point is with this, I started off with a program called Session Band, and the thing that's interesting about this is it really takes you inside different songs and the formats and how they're made. But you can change the formats by changing the instruments, by changing the length of the chords, by changing the length of the patterns, by changing the genre, by changing the styles in them, and you can do all of that. A bit like what Band in the Box used to do for the musicians out there, but for the non-musicians, this is like really good because it gives you an example of what, of like songs and what time they're in and everything. But you can change all that, and you can go into other apps and bring in other instruments, or send it into other apps and put other instruments in there. So you can do all kinds of stuff. So with this, it had a compass of chords underneath it, and basically it took me out of my comfort zone of speech, if you will. I've just said kind of probably about 3 times in the last 5 minutes. But pardon me, again, I've got wind here, but pardon me. This is why it's rough and ready. I like doing these shows like this. Basically, it made me realise and go, look, you're using the same chords you would do anyway if you were playing the piano, because you'd be restricted. Here, you're not restricted, and you can. It's almost like saying you've got a house and you can actually create more land and build quite a decadent or quite a really luxurious piece, a luxurious piece of living quarters or whatever, for one day. You can experience it, you can see what it looked like. But I obviously sort of, for those of you, you can add your own instruments to it. Like I said, you can do all of that. So I then came up with this, and it's called My Mystery. And I think the most interesting thing about it for me was, as soon as Jay's band heard it, a local jazz band heard it, Jay Fasho Luke's band heard it, he said, "Oh, it'd really be cool to cover that." And I really hope that a band does cover it one day, because I'm really proud of it. It's like nothing I've ever done. and that's the thing. It's called My Mystery, and it sort of has answered the mystery for me of, does it really matter if you don't really have a genre? The answer is no. You just need to be confident in what you do, and that goes for anything you do in life. So enjoy this song. It's called My Mystery. God bless, and have a good day.